staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hello and welcome to the Caregiver Solution Info Show. Thanks for joining today. So we're still in this pandemic. Lots of things have changed and a lot of things are still changing as we battle this coronavirus. So maybe you're like me, and I began to wonder what would happen if I got sick or a loved one got sick to the point where we couldn't recover well enough to take care of ourselves the rest of our lives. What would happen? How would I manage? What's the plan? What would it cost for care long term? So I thought maybe today would be a great time to talk about long-term care cost and the different options to pay for it going forward. Certainly, you know, we all have some little bit of extra time now with the virus staying home, social distancing. A lot of people are working from home and have a little bit more time to think about the future and what the future is going to look like after, hopefully, this virus is eradicated or we find a vaccine, however we get rid of it. It has changed our lives. And so we want to be prepared. As always on this program, we've always talked about how caregivers need to be prepared for themselves and for the people that they take care of. So today, my guest is going to be talking about all of these things and more. His name is Michael Brooks, and he's a financial services professional with the Bridge Group located in Boca Raton, Florida. And joining me here, I see him online. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Marcia. It's a pleasure.
So I know you've been in the financial service industry for many, many years and have lots of experience in this arena, amongst other things. And so we want to talk about long-term care. But before we can talk about it, I think it's important to really define it. So what is long-term care?
Okay, great question. Long-term care is custodial care. And when we talk about long-term care, we're talking about activities of daily living. If you think about activities of daily living from the perspective of what you do first thing in the morning, we get out of bed, we transfer, we go to the bathroom, we bathe ourselves, we feed ourselves. Okay? Continence is an activity of daily living. These are activities that we do every day without really thinking of. Long-term care and long-term care planning would affect when a patient or a client is unable to do two of those activities of daily living. Okay? That's when long-term care planning would step in and would start to help the family and the caregivers.
Okay, so long-term care is getting services, but we're not talking about medical services necessarily, are we? Because I know a lot of people say, well, you know, I have Medicare. Medicare will take care of me for the rest of my life. They don't understand that Medicare is what you just called custodial care. what does a custodial care actually mean for people that are new to this concept?
So really what we're talking about is the difference between chronic and acute illness, right? An acute illness is a broken arm. I can go to the doctor's going to assist with a broken arm. If I have a heart attack, they can give me medication and treatments in order to repair or help me get better from that heart attack. When we talk about custodial care, these are illnesses, these are diseases, disabilities that we're not going to get better from. Okay. If you have a stroke, I shouldn't say a stroke. I mean, if you have a massive stroke, sometimes you're not going to be able to get better. You're not going to be able to take care of yourself. If a patient develops Alzheimer's disease, these are things that are going to chronically get worse over the course of time. That's what we're really talking about when we talk about long-term care insurance.
So someone would need help for all of these things, and they have to have a plan, because what if they don't have a plan in place for who's going to provide that care, right? So this is important for people to plan. But is long-term care something that you have to get in a nursing home necessarily?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's certainly part of the planning. And one of the things that I think it's important, whether you're working with an advisor or you're just sitting down with your family and saying, what should we be doing? What type of planning should we be looking at? You should have that conversation. Where do I want my care? Do I want my care at home? Do I want to be in an assisted living facility? Do I want to go into a nursing home? I'm sure you and many people that are listening, the last thing that most people want to do is go into a nursing home. Right? I mean, that's
Right.
always kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. But unfortunately, we do have it may be a last resort that we go into a nursing home. But long-term care can be provided anywhere. It can be provided at home. It can be provided, again, at an assisted living facility, at a nursing home, or even an adult daycare center.
Oh, that's good to know. So if I'm a person that needs some help, maybe I live alone and I need some help, but I don't need it like 24/7. I don't need help all the time. Can long-term care still benefit me part-time? Is that possible?
Sure. I mean, when we talk about long-term care and long-term care planning, there's a lot of different aspects that go into it. If we're talking about a long-term care insurance policy, you may have a monthly or a daily benefit. You can use that any way that you see fit, or any way that your family and your caregivers see fit, that's going to provide you with the best care. Again, from an insurance perspective, the insurance company isn't going to tell you this is how you have to have the insurance, or this is how you have to have your care. Basically, what they're going to be providing a patient or client, if you will, is a bucket of money, again, either on a daily or a monthly basis, that they're able to use however they see fit.
So there's insurance to pay for our long-term care insurance that is flexible. It sounds like we could use it almost when we need it or how we choose to use it. But let's back up just a second and think about, how does somebody know if they need long-term care insurance in the first place?
So that's really going to be dependent on their doctors, on themselves, on their family members, on the caregivers. That would be more of I guess for lack of a better term, a community decision, right? A lot of times, long-term care insurance, long-term care events are gradual, where maybe somebody only needs help Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And maybe it's not even that person that needs help. Maybe it's a spouse that's saying, I can take care of my husband or my wife, but I just need somebody to come in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a few hours just to help me out. And maybe 6 months of that progresses into maybe we need somebody here 5 days a week. maybe 6 months later progresses into something along the lines of, we can't give that level of care at home, and we need to move into a facility. So, as far as when you need it, that's going to be dependent on everyone. Each individual will have their own way of knowing when they need it.
Great. Well, I know people need to think about this, and certainly there are people that are already caregivers that are caring for someone. Maybe they have insurance to help with that, maybe they don't. So they know the toils that go along with that, how hard it is, and probably wish that they did have help because nobody can do it by themselves. It's just a really hard job and causes a lot of stress on the caregiver. We know that. That's been documented. And then there are adult children who are looking at their parents aging and seeing that their parents are failing and needing more help as time goes on, and wondering about what their parents need, but at the same time looking at themselves saying, gee, I'm the baby boomer generation. I'm going to get there someday. We're dealing with, this terrible coronavirus pandemic, and things are changing. People are getting sick. People are passing, but it's causing people to think more about the future. So we want to stress to people to, this is what this is for. It's educational to help them to put those seeds, to plant those seeds and find out what they can do, how they can do it, what should be doing, and make that decision as a family. Who's going to be the one taking care of mom or dad? And if they are, do they have to quit their job to do it? Is there money set aside for this? So this is great because I'm so excited that you're here to answer all of these questions and more. And we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll get right back into it. So we'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My guest today is Michael Brooks. He's a financial services professional with the Bridge Group in Boca Raton, Florida, and we're talking about long-term care and options, including long-term care insurance. So, Michael, there are people who would say, long-term care, I've heard it's very expensive. I don't think I can afford that. Can they not afford it? And how do they weigh, what they should do? A lot of people say, I'm just going to save up all my money. Other people, kind of wing it. But is it expensive in the long run, I guess, is the bottom line?
That's the $1 million question. Is it expensive? It certainly can be expensive. I can't sit here and tell you that it's not, but in my opinion, it's also expensive not to do anything. I mean, when you look at the cost of a nursing home today, Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, South Florida, you're probably about $120,000 a year. I think it's one of the latest numbers that I just saw. If you're in an assisted living facility, you're probably anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000 a month. Obviously, you would have a much better handle on the exact numbers, but that's expensive. And a lot of the people that we deal with, especially that are the caregivers, that may be listening right now, that may be in their 50s or their 60s. This is a type of plan that they may not be putting in place for another 20 or 30 years. So we also have to factor in that $110,000 today, at even a very modest 2% inflation rate, it could be $200,000-$300,000 into the future. So is it expensive? Yeah, 100%. It can certainly be expensive, but it can also be affordable too. From an insurance standpoint, there are plans that start as little as $50 a month. And then you can design a plan that's thousands of dollars a month. I think the key, Marcia, is sitting down with either a financial professional, with their family, and saying, what are we doing? What is our plan if one of us were to get sick? And a lot of times I have folks who say, oh, I'm going to take care of my husband. I'm going to take care of my spouse. And that's a great plan. Now, we have to fast forward 20, 25 years. And you look at folks and you say, well, now you're 87 years old. Your husband's 210 pounds. Are you going to be able to pick him up and help him to the bathroom? I mean, so all of our plans are great when we're in our 50s and 60s thinking, oh, we'll just take care of it in the future. I guess the bottom line is it's really important to start thinking about it now. And I tell my clients and people that I deal with all the time, deciding not to do something is still deciding to do something. You're deciding that we're not going to do anything about this and we're going to just let it go into the future. And that's certainly fine. But if you're concerned about that now, then you really should start speaking to somebody or start sitting down and crafting a plan for yourself.
Yeah, actually, when you start cranking those numbers out, like you just mentioned for nursing home and things like that, for a specialized memory care assisted living, which costs more than a regular, we call it a regular, meaning not specialized for dementia. But if you're looking at a dementia-specific assisted living, and a good one, depending upon where you live in the country, it could be anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 per month. So, it really gets up there. And of course, there's no cure for Alzheimer's, and it's, to me, a pandemic all of its own, that there's no cure for it. So people have to think those things in the future, look forward to what it's going to cost in the future, what's going to happen. Nobody ever thinks, oh, gee, am I going to get Alzheimer's? No one ever expects that, but it can happen. So these are numbers that when families are crunching, they need to take that into account that it could actually cost them upwards of $10,000 a month, either in a memory care assisted living or a nursing home. So that being said, Michael, long-term care policies, long-term care insurance has been around for quite some time now, but things have changed quite a bit in just the last 10 or 12 years, from the policies that you just go out and buy and, hope for the best, and if you need it, you'd have it. But things have changed. There were a lot of companies that stopped writing policies and stopped issuing those, and a lot of companies raised their prices. But in this last decade, things have changed quite a bit. So can you compare in general some of the major differences between a policy maybe written 15, 20 years ago and a policy maybe written today?
Sure. When we look at it just from what we call a traditional long-term care policy, there have been some significant changes. We used to have unlimited policies, where if you had $150 a day benefit, you could say, well, I want that unlimited. So the insurance company would just give you $150 a day as long as you were sick and as long as you needed the coverage. Those are no longer available. They've gone by the wayside. So that's a significant change. You mentioned it as well. 20, 30 years ago, there were probably 300 some odd carriers that were writing long-term care insurance. now you're down to a handful of 8 or 12 that we actually really recommend. I'm sure there's more out there, fingers crossed. But one of the main changes that has come are hybrid plans or critical care riders. They're two separate things. A hybrid plan is going to combine a life insurance policy with a long-term care benefit. Some of them are single premium, and when I say single premium, I mean one-time payment. You can say to the insurance company, hey, we have $50,000 sitting in a savings account. And Bank of America is so generous that they're paying us 0.07% on our money in that savings account. But if I were to get sick, I'd probably use this money first. So what you can do is you can say to the insurance carrier, hey, here's $50,000. And that insurance carrier, depending on your age and your health and other factors, may say, well, okay, we'll give you $250,000 worth of long-term care benefit. And they break it down monthly, and there's other details involved, but they're going to give you a lump sum to pay for your long-term care. If you pass away after 25 years, they're going to say, hey, you gave us 50, we're going to give your family a $120,000 death benefit. There's also money-back guarantees where in 5, 6, 7 years you say, you know what, I don't need that long-term care anymore. They'll say, here's your $50,000 back. So it's kind of a game changer in the long-term care planning arena, especially if you have the financial wherewithal to do that. Now, one of the other benefits or some of the newer things that have come out is rather than just doing it as a single one-time payment, depending on your age, again, and your health status, you could say, well, I can't give you $50,000 right now, but I can give you $5,000 a year for the next 10 years. I can give you $10,000. Well, and again, whatever number it is that you're comfortable with and what you want to plan for, but you can break that up. One of the a newer change that's kind of been catering more towards, I don't want to say a younger, but it's a critical care rider where you would take a traditional permanent life insurance policy and you can add a critical care rider or a long-term care rider where you have, again, a lump sum in addition to that death benefit. The main difference between both of those policies, the long-term care hybrid, I would tell a client, is it's long-term care protection and then death benefit protection. Okay, so it's more, I want this for long-term care, and oh, here's some death benefit if I don't use it. The critical care rider is, I need life insurance protection, and oh, long-term care is also important to me as well. So it kind of gives, again, I don't want to say the best of both worlds, but it gives the consumer more options to look at when it comes to their planning.
Well, I think the changes are important to know because in the past, I've talked to a lot of caregivers and a lot of people that would say, I understand what long-term care insurance is all about, but if I pay in my premium every month for years and years and years and I never use it, that's money just out the window. And so now you're saying that there's a way to really benefit from this investment, as you would.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I hear that all the time from clients, and that's one of the biggest things is people are like, well, what if I pay for it and we never use it? It's a tough decision to make. There are solutions that are available to people. There are a lot of traditional long-term care policies that offer return of premium riders. It's really going to depend on everyone's individual situation. Again, I always liken it to, you can have two families that live in a house side by side. They both make the same amount of money, and they're going to have completely different long-term care plans because of just what they want. So I guess the key takeaway is that there are options, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it's important for people to know that, gee, if I did this, it's not like it was in the old day that I'm just going to waste my money if I don't use it. I mean, we all pay car insurance and hope that we don't have an accident. We all pay home insurance and hope our homes don't go up in flame. If that happened, we wish that we had the policy. So it is an insurance, but in this case, a lot of people think of it maybe as a luxury item and not as a necessity type of thing. So I think thinking about it in those terms that you've described gives them a lot more to think about and a lot more options,
Sure.
to consider.
Sure. Of course, I always tell my clients, I don't know anyone who wishes to pay their homeowner's insurance and then, go, gosh, the house didn't burn down this year, we wasted our money. Again, I think you hit the nail on the head. Traditional long-term care insurance is insurance, but there are options that are available to people.
And I think that's important. Having options is probably the best thing you can do. And if somebody starts paying a premium, especially in the old days, I actually encountered this case. They started paying the premium, and then the husband was the one that was in charge of the bills, right? And so he's paying his life insurance, long-term care. I'm sorry, it was a long-term care policy. He's paying the premiums. He develops dementia and forgets to pay the bills for many months. And then what happens? Have you ever encountered this?
Sure. I've certainly heard of it, and one of the things that I always suggest to my clients, and it's available, on all long-term care policies now, is the ability to name a trusted third party, where if you have that situation where the carrier is sending bills and no one is paying it, you can designate whether it's a friend, a family member, your niece, nephew, son, daughter, where the insurance company is going to say, hey, Joe and Margie haven't paid their insurance policy. Do they still want it? Do you want to take a look? Basically making them aware of the fact where we can have a third party step in and say, hey, why aren't you paying this anymore? And I think one of the other things that's important is if you work with an advisor, whether it's your financial advisor, a long-term care advisor, an insurance advisor, and you have a good relationship, that advisor should be saying, hey, wait a second, we haven't gotten your premiums. What's going on? Is everything okay? So there should be different levels of protection. But to your point, that they have, the insurance carriers have gone about and said, we see this as a problem and we know that we needed to correct it.
Yeah, in this particular case, I mean, it was able to be worked out somehow, but not always, I'm sure. Another safeguard maybe is having those premiums automatically deducted from a bank account, or maybe having them charged to a credit card or something like that, so that it keeps getting paid regardless if someone forgets, right, to pay that. So, yeah, good information. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So we'll be more with Michael Brooks and the Bridge Group. Stay tuned.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Court's Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care. That's all they do. They have about 55 assisted living memory care communities throughout the United States, and they're a great resource. And they would like to give to you today a free book as a resource just for watching this show. This is called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful book all about caregiving, talking about Alzheimer's and other related dementia, full of information and tips and definitions that you as a caregiver would need to know. The book is absolutely free. All you have to do is email and say you heard about it on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show and leave your name, address, and telephone number, and they'll be glad to mail a book to you. So give them an email whenever you can, anytime. That email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, email to delray@arden-courts.com. Get the 36-Hour Day book absolutely free. I highly recommend it. So my guest today is Michael Brooks. Michael is a financial services professional with the Bridge Group located in Boca Raton, Florida, and we're talking about long-term care and long-term care insurance. Thanks again, Michael, for being here. This is a great conversation we're having for not only caregivers, but potential caregivers and baby boomers that need to be thinking about their future and how they're going to pay for it as they age and get sick. So that being said, are there any guidelines or underwriting requirements that people have to meet before they can actually get a long-term care insurance? And are there things that would exclude somebody from getting them? What about that?
Sure. Another great question. The way I would answer that is yes, all of these policies are medically underwritten, okay? If you have major health issues, it may be a little bit more difficult to get. Every insurance carrier that offers long-term care is going to have their own set of underwriting guidelines, meaning that what one carrier will accept, another one may not, okay? It's important, if you're in great shape, and you're 50 years old, you've never smoked, you're in perfect health, well then you can just go out and start looking for the least expensive insurance policy. And even then I'd caution on doing that. Sometimes you get what you pay for, right? But if you have some type of medical issue, it may not necessarily exclude you, but I think it's important, again, to speak to a long-term care planning professional so you can find out which carriers you should be looking at. One of the important things, and it's happened a few times where I've had a potential client give us a call and say, hey, I was dealing with somebody else and we applied with ABC company. I got declined. What can you do for me? And unfortunately, once you get declined by a carrier, there is something called the Medical Information Bureau where all of that information goes into. And all those carriers are going to pull that information. They're going to say, wait a second, ABC declined, Mr. Smith. Why would we want to accept that risk? But there are ways to go about informally applying where you can go to, you can speak to a long-term care insurance advisor. We can gather the information and go to the carriers and say, hey, this is Mr. Smith. He has... he had a heart attack 6 years ago. So we know we're not going to want to go with ABC company because they within 10 years. But here's XYZ company that will accept someone with a heart attack within 5 years. So it's really important that you speak to a professional, especially if you do have a medical condition. Obviously, if you're in a long-term care facility, I don't know of many insurance companies that are willing to offer anything, so that's going to be a complete knockout. Diabetes is another one. If you're insulin-dependent diabetic, we're going to have to look at some other options that are available as far as planning, because an insurance policy is not going to work. Now, if you're diabetic and you're controlled with like a pill, metformin, or diet, there are options that are available. I guess the key that I want people to take away from this is, even if you've had a medical condition, there's still planning that can be done, and there are still options that are available. You know, I've gotten people that have called the office before, Marcia, and have said, I have this. And we say, well, we can't get you long-term care insurance. And they go, okay, thanks, goodbye, click. And you're going, no, wait, hold on a second. I can, you know, we can help. There are options. But a lot of times people just think, well, it's long-term care insurance, and if I can't get it, then I can't do anything. But again, there are always options that are available. And even if you can't get it, there are still planning techniques that can be put in place in order to help somebody and help a family with long-term care.
Well, that's good to know. Is there a minimum age that someone should start looking for long-term care? And is there also a maximum age that someone should just say, I'm too old, forget it?
On the too old, forget it. You know, most carriers are going to stop at age 80. They won't issue a policy past age 80. Now, with that said, I've been in this business for 15, 16 years. There aren't many people that are that age that actually do get approved. As we all know, you know, once we start getting up there, a couple things may not be working properly. We may not be in the best health, so there may be some issues there. As far as the younger end of it, there are carriers that'll write at 18 years old. That's, in my opinion, I think that's a little young. One of the youngest clients that I had that ever came to me was in his early 40s and said, I want long-term care insurance. And I said, Adam, you're really on the young end. You know, most people aren't looking at it in their early 40s. And he had a personal story and a personal, basically his mother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and he had to take care of her and be her caregiver. And he said, there's certain things that I had to do for my mother that I knew my mom didn't want me doing, but I had to do. And he said, I will never have my children do that for me. And to him, it was very important that he take care of it and start putting something in place. So again, what I would say is that most people are probably, I mean, you want to be in your early to mid 50s, maybe your late 50s. And I know a lot of times it's maybe 10 years later is when people really start thinking about it. But health is the most important thing. So if you're in your early 50s, mid 50s, it's a lot easier to get an insurance policy, if that's the direction you're going to go in, than waiting until later in life and then looking at getting the insurance. Did that answer your question? I hope it did.
Yes. So is it still true that the early the age you actually invest in a long-term care policy, the less your premiums are?
Sure, 100%. It's all age-based. So the younger that somebody is, the less expensive it is. And you had asked earlier, too, about some of the changes that have been made with long-term care policies. Years ago, these policies were all unisex. Male, female didn't matter. The cost was the cost. Most carriers these days have gone to a male-female rating, where a female will actually pay slightly more. For the same age female will pay slightly more for a policy than the same age male, which is the exact opposite of life insurance, where the same age male is going to be paying more for life insurance than a female. And that just has to do with the fact that females live longer than men. So the chances of them needing a long-term care policy or needing some type of care are slightly greater, and that's the difference.
Well, I think men will definitely live longer if their spouse needs long-term care and they have an insurance policy to help them, because it's tough, and a lot of men are not cut out to be caregivers. Let me tell you, I've seen it firsthand.
I'm sure.
So, good point there, right? All very interesting. I love this conversation. It's really important, for people to think about. But as the tables have been adjusted, like you said, male, female, age related, what if there's somebody not in their 50s, but they start thinking about it in their 60s? But you mentioned it's all health related too. So if you have someone in their early 60s and they're in completely, 100% good health, that could probably not hurt them, right? I mean, would they have a good chance of being able to get something
100%.
comparable?
Yes, 100%. And again, what I would tell anybody is that it's never too late. And I don't want anyone to construe what I said as, oh, I'm not even going to look at it because I'm too old or this. Speak to your advisor. Speak to speak to a long-term care planning professional. Speak to your financial advisor. Whoever it is, it's really important that you look at what your options are. And to your point, a healthy female in her early 60s, it's still we can still certainly get them a policy. I mean, I'm not trying to say to dissuade anybody. I mean, it's certainly easy, and it's a very easy process as well.
Yeah, good point. I think it's important to look at all those options and shop around, right? Because we shop around and we compare prices with lots of things. And that being said, when we come back from commercial break, we're going to be talking about how does one compare? How do you shop around for a long-term care policy? So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Michael Brooks, and he is a financial services professional with the Bridge Group located in Boca Raton, Florida. And we're talking about long-term care insurance and what people need to know. So, Michael, if someone says, gee, I think I should be considering this, Marcia said shop around because like everything else, you want to get a good price on it, especially it's a long-term commitment. How does one best, in your experience, shop for a policy when there are so many different ones to look at?
Again, another great question. What I would say to anybody is make sure that you're working with an advisor that has a background in long-term care insurance, that understands long-term care insurance. When you sit down with that advisor, it's almost like going to the doctor. There's a lot of different techniques that can be used for long-term care planning. For instance, I've had folks who've come to me who said, you know what, Mike, we have a permanent life insurance policy. And the kids are grown, they're all doing well. We really don't need all of this, but we've got it sitting here. And we've been able to use the money that's in a life insurance policy and transfer it over into a long-term care policy. And the reason why I use this as an example is that those same clients came to us just saying, can you just give us a quote for long-term care insurance? We want to find the least expensive out there. So long-term care, it's not like car insurance where, hey, Geico will do it for $9.50, but State Farm will do it for $9.25. I'm saving the $25. This is, again, it's something that you're going to have or at least be putting in place for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So you're going to want to work with a professional that knows the long-term care industry. Make sure that you're working with somebody who has the ability to go out to all different companies. You don't want someone who's just going to say, oh, I represent XYZ company and they're the best. They may be the best, but I think it's important for you to understand what's out there. And as I mentioned before, Marcia, getting the cheapest may not necessarily be the best. You may want to look at a company where, hey, this company is charging $2,000 versus company B that's charging $1,600. Well, what do I get in that policy? What type of benefits am I going to get? What type of rate stability has these companies had? Because you touched on it before, and it's kind of that third rail in long-term care planning where people say, well, I took this policy out 15 years ago, and I was told it was going to be $200 a month, but they keep increasing my rates. Well, it's not like a life insurance policy where they tell you it's $200 and it's going to be that way forever. It's almost like health insurance where they can keep raising rates. So you want to make sure that you're with a company that's got a good rate stability. You also want to make sure that you're with a company that's got good financial ratings because, again, this is a promise to pay sometime in the future, whether it's 20 years, 25, 30 years, hopefully it's 40 years into the future before you need this. You want to make sure that the company that you're dealing with from an insurance standpoint, that they're financially sound. Are they making good investment decisions today that are going to make sure that my money or my benefit is there 40 years into the future?
Right. Well, one of the things I do want to bring up, we touched on it just briefly at the top of the program tonight, was about where long-term care goes into effect. And we talked about how people can use benefits at home, in a nursing home, assisted living. So one of the things I think it's important for people to realize is that when you are shopping for a policy, would it not behoove someone to maybe have an all-inclusive type policy that would include all of those scenarios rather than just say, well, I want a long-term care policy if I ever have to go in a nursing home, rather than, being able to include home care, assisted living care. I know it's more expensive for that type of comprehensive, but sometimes you want to cover your bases, right?
Of course, that's a great point. And there are policies where they can say, well, here, this is just for a nursing home. Here, this is just for, just for home care. There's different waiting periods. There's some policies that say, well, if you go into an assisted living facility or a nursing home, there's a 90-day waiting period, meaning that the insurance, it's almost like a deductible. The insurance company's not going to pay for 90 days. But if you have home health care, we'll waive that and just start paying right away, or a 20-day waiting period. So it's important that you understand what all of those are. And again, to your point, it's really important that you understand that is this a comprehensive policy? Because we touched on it earlier, and I'm sure you've seen it, where most people start off at home, and then they gradually move maybe into an assisted living facility, and then into a nursing home. Again, I don't know. The 15, 16 years that I've been doing this, I've never had a client who said, hey, I'm sick, I want to go to a nursing home. That's typically, again, where the last place that most people want to go. So I think it's important that you make sure that you understand all the coverages and everywhere that it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think it is important because people sometimes, say, oh, gee, I have a policy, and I'll look at it for them because they don't quite understand it, and they bought it many, many years ago, and they were very, really upset when I said, your policy does not cover assisted living. It's for just in the home, and they didn't really understand that. So I think, understanding what you're getting, certainly shouldn't have to be said, but a lot of people will buy policies and not really understand, what it covers. What about inflation? Do you have policies that take into account inflation?
Sure. No, another great point. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's something that's extremely important that you factor that in. Again, if you were to say, if I had a client come in today and said, I want $100 a day policy. Well, that's great. I mean, maybe you're going to get some type of home care, and you'll be able to have an aide come in. But what happens in 15, 20 years? Again, like we said, and especially when you look at the cost and the inflation when it comes to long-term care and to custodial care, it's much greater than our traditional inflation rate. So it's very, very important that you factor that in. And that's also going to play a significant role in the cost of the policy, right? So you may say, well, I want a $250 a day policy without inflation. And I may look at a client and go, you know what? You're probably better off taking 125 now and having maybe like a 3% simple or a 3% compounding type of inflation protection, because we're not going to be using this for another 20, 25 years. And we want to make sure that that number catches up or stays somewhat near what the potential cost of care are going to be.
Absolutely. I have a personal story about this, and maybe you have a story too you want to share, but I had a lady come in to see me, and her husband had dementia, and he did have a long-term care policy, and yes, it did cover assisted living, but they bought it so long ago, and they did not have the inflation rider, and the daily benefit was not enough after 30 years or whatever it was, the age of the policy was not enough to cover the daily rate or the monthly rate combined for the assisted living, and they did not have the savings or income or any other money put aside to pay the difference between the long-term care policy's daily benefit, what it would pay. And so here they paid so many years into this, and then she was between a rock and a hard place because she had the policy, but yet it was doing her no good. It wasn't enough, and she didn't have any money, and they didn't have children who could step in and maybe help out that way. That was one of the saddest days when I had to tell her that it didn't work for her. So again, these are really important things to share.
Sure. And I think to your point too, it's really important that your listeners, that any caregivers that are out there, that again, I keep saying, but speak to a long-term, somebody that understands these policies, and more importantly, someone that you can have a relationship with. Because at the end of the day, you really don't want to say, oh, I've got a long-term care policy, I took care of the planning, I'm going to take it, file it away, and I'm not going to look at it for 25 years. It's really important that you review these policies with your advisor. Make sure that it's keeping up with what it is that you want to do. Our lives change, and our plans change. It's really important that you're making sure that, hey, I didn't buy a long-term care policy and I'm taken care of.
Exactly. And if someone's listening today and they want more information or they want to contact you, how can they do that, Michael?
Sure. That's a good question. My number, I believe, is on the bottom of the screen. I can be reached at 954-958-4220. I know in the craziness of the pandemic, I've got many clients who are saying, I know I need to do this. I don't know if we want to sit down face-to-face. And we can certainly schedule a Zoom meeting, a conference call, or just a call at first. You can also take a look at our website. That's www.thebridgegroup.com.
Wonderful. And so I would encourage everybody, check it out. Give Michael a call. He is a wonderful guy, as you can tell. He's full of information, lots of experience, been in the business a long time when it comes to long-term care insurance. So give Michael Brooks a call at the Bridge Group at 954-958-4220. Thank you, Michael, for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcia. My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. You take care now. And thank
You
you,
too.
listeners, for tuning in, and hope to see you next week, same time, same place, caregiversolutions.info, or on the iHeartRadio app under WNN every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.